My name is Tegan Brooks. I'm 31 now, and yesterday, Forbes dropped their new under 30 list with my face right on it, next to a $98 million valuation for the app that books and runs small beach hotels better than any human ever could. My phone had been dead silent for 9 straight months. No birthdays, no holidays, nothing. Then at 10:12 a.m., the screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen since last year. Dad. The message was 2 lines. Family dinner tonight, 7:30 sharp. We have big news. I stared at it for maybe 10 seconds. 9 months of being a ghost, and now 12 hours after the Forbes article went live, suddenly I'm invited to dinner. I typed back one sentence. Sorry, busy. Forbes party starts at 7. Send. I watched the little read check appear almost instantly. Then the 3 dots started jumping. They jumped for a long time. I didn't wait. I locked the phone and tossed it on the couch. They thought they were texting the same broke, quiet daughter who used to beg for attention. They had no idea the girl they ignored just became the one person who could bury them. But before I tell you exactly how that dinner actually went down, smash the like button, drop a comment, tell me where you're watching from right now, and hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens when the table finally flips. Trust me, you're not ready for this one. 2 years ago, on a bright May afternoon in Cambridge, Massachusetts, I stood backstage at MIT's Killian Court trying not to throw up. The black gown hung loose on my shoulders. I'd lost 12 pounds that final semester living on coffee and 3 hours of sleep. The crimson hood felt heavy, like it already knew I didn't belong up there alone. Outside, 3,500 chairs faced the stage under a cloudless sky. The Charles River sparkled behind the podium. Families filled every row, waving signs, holding balloons, cameras ready. I clutched my name card so hard the edges cut into my fingers. I had sent 6 tickets to Virginia Beach. Front row, center section. I paid for express mail, tracked the package, saw the delivered notification myself. I told myself traffic on I-95 was brutal this time of year. I told myself they were parking. I told myself anything that kept my legs moving forward. The dean started calling names. Each graduate walked across the platform, family sections erupting in cheers and whistles. I kept my eyes locked on those 6 empty seats, willing them to fill. They never did. Tegan Elizabeth Brooks, Master of Science in Electrical Engineering and Computer Science. My name boomed across the courtyard. The walk felt endless. The wooden stage flexed under my borrowed heels. The president smiled, handed me the leather folder, shook my hand once. Cameras flashed from every direction, none of them mine. I glanced down one last time. Still empty. I forced the smile they wanted for the official photo, turned my tassel, and stepped off the far side. The second my foot hit grass, my phone buzzed against my hip. Dad, you actually went through with it without us there. Fine. Don't expect another dime from me. You made your choice. I stopped walking. Graduates streamed around me, laughing, hugging, crying, happy tears. Someone's father lifted his daughter off the ground. Someone's mom was sobbing into a bouquet of roses. I stood frozen in the middle of it all, reading those words over and over until the screen went black. The courtyard smelled like fresh-cut grass and expensive perfume. I could hear champagne corks popping behind me. I felt the exact moment something inside me cracked open and went quiet. I didn't cry. Not yet. I walked alone across the grass, past the celebrating families, past the proud fathers who would never be mine. My phone buzzed again. Mom, this time. Tell us where you are, we're stuck in traffic. I didn't answer. I kept walking until I reached Massachusetts Avenue, sat on the curb outside the student center, and finally let the tears come. They were silent. They always had been. A janitor sweeping the sidewalk glanced over, then looked away. Nobody stopped. Nobody asked if I was okay. I wiped my face with the sleeve of the gown, stood up, and took the T to Logan. I had a 9:15 p.m. flight back to Norfolk because I couldn't afford to miss another delivery shift. I boarded still wearing the cap and gown. The flight attendant asked if I wanted to hang them up. I told her no, folded them into the overhead bin like any other carry-on. Somewhere over Rhode Island, I opened my laptop on the tray table and started writing the code that would one day put my name on that Forbes list. Because empty seats teach you exactly who will never show up when it matters. And I decided right then next time the world looked at me, no one would ever have the option to look away again. That row of empty seats didn't come out of nowhere. I learned very early that in the Brooks house, attention was a limited currency, and it was always spent on someone else. When I was 12, I had been taking violin lessons for 3 years. My teacher entered me in the Virginia Beach Youth Orchestra solo competition. I practiced every single day after school until my fingers bled. The concert was on a Saturday night at the Sandler Center. I wore the navy velvet dress Mom had bought me 2 years earlier, now too short at the sleeves and hem. Dad picked me up from rehearsal the week before and said Brandon made varsity quarterback. The team has a scrimmage that same night. We're all going to support him. I asked if we could at least come to the second half of my concert. Mom laughed like I'd told a joke. Teagan family shows up for family. Brandon needs us more. I played the concert anyway. The auditorium was packed. I walked onto the stage bow, shaking, and scanned the crowd for 5 familiar faces. None. I performed Vivaldi's Spring, flawlessly took my bow to polite applause, and went home on the city bus with my violin case banging against my knees. The next morning, there were pictures all over the refrigerator. Brandon in his jersey helmet under his arm, Dad's arm slung around his shoulders. Madison holding a handmade poster that said, "Go Brandon number 1." My certificate from the competition went straight into a drawer. That was the first time I understood the rules. If someone else needed the spotlight, mine got switched off. High school followed the same pattern. Brandon wrecked 2 cars before he turned 18. Both times, Dad replaced them without question. Madison decided she wanted to be an influencer at 15 and got a brand new iPhone and ring light for Christmas. I asked for a laptop that actually ran coding software without crashing. Dad told me to use the library. When college acceptance letters came, I got into William and Mary on a partial scholarship. Dad looked at the tuition bill and said, "That's a lot of money for a hobby. Maybe community college first." 2 months later, Brandon announced he was taking a gap year to travel, and suddenly there was $25,000 available for him to backpack Europe with his buddies. I graduated valedictorian, applied to every scholarship I could find, and chose MIT because the financial aid package covered everything except books. Dad still sent a monthly allowance, $500 wired on the first enough for groceries, and the occasional Metro card. It wasn't generosity, it was control. As long as that money kept coming, he could still threaten to stop it. I worked 3 jobs anyway. Morning shifts pouring lattes at the student center, afternoons tutoring calculus to freshmen who partied too hard, and 3 nights a week delivering Thai food across Cambridge and Somerville in my beat-up Camry. I smelled like espresso and curry most of the time, but the tips paid for servers' cloud credits, and the first lines of code I wrote at 3 in the morning when the dorm was finally quiet. Every winter break I came home to Virginia Beach, hoping something might be different. It never was. The family business 7 tired beach motels built in the 70s was bleeding money. Guests left bad reviews about peeling paint, spotty Wi-Fi, and beds that sagged in the middle. Dad refused to update anything. People come for the ocean, not the internet, he'd say, then spend the renovation budget on a new fishing boat. I watched bookings drop year after year while Brandon managed 1 property and spent most afternoons on the golf course, and Madison filmed TikToks on the beach in designer bikinis Dad bought her. I tried to talk to him once, showed him spreadsheets, explained dynamic pricing and online travel agencies. He patted my head like I was still 12 and said, "Sweetie, leave the business to the men." So I stopped asking. Instead, I built my own thing in secret. Every dollar I earned from those 3 jobs went into servers' APIs and the first version of an algorithm that could predict occupancy adjust rates in real time and talk to every booking site at once. I named the prototype Tide Sink because it moved with the waves of demand no one else bothered to read. By the time I defended my master's thesis, TideSync already had 3 small independent hotels testing it. Revenue jumped 42% in the first quarter. I knew then this wasn't just a project anymore. It was the way out. And the empty seats at graduation were the final proof I no longer needed their money, their approval, or their presence. When Dad's text lit up my phone after 9 months of dead silence, I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt curious. Curious how fast they could rewrite 9 months of nothing into a family emergency that suddenly required my presence. I set the phone on the kitchen island and let the screen go dark. The apartment was quiet except for the low hum of the ocean 2 blocks away. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows and looked down at the boardwalk lights flickering on for the evening. People were heading out to dinner, laughing arms linked, normal families. I turned away and opened the hallway closet, the one I never use for guests. Inside hung the clothes from another life, the gray fisherman sweater with the frayed cuff I wore during finals week at MIT, the faded Levi's that used to be my only pair of jeans, the scuffed brown boots I bought at a thrift store in Somerville because they were $20 and warm. I pulled them all out and laid them on the bed. Then I went to the garage. My daily driver is a matte black Audi e-tron that still smells new. I walked past it, past the Tesla I barely touch, and stopped at the very back corner where the 2014 Toyota Camry sits under a gray cover. I bought it used the week I moved back to Virginia Beach after graduation. The hood paint is oxidized from too many summers, the driver's side mirror is cracked, and the check engine light has been on for 3 years because the fix costs more than the car is worth now. I keep it registered and insured for exactly this kind of night. I pulled the cover off, tossed it in the trunk, and slid behind the wheel. The seats still smell faintly of the Thai food I used to deliver. The key turned with the familiar hesitant grind. I backed out slowly, the tires crunching over the epoxy floor, and headed south on Atlantic Avenue. The sun was dropping behind the hotels, turning the sky orange and pink over the water. I rolled the windows down and let the salt air whip through the car. No music. I needed to feel every second of this drive. I thought about the first message I sent back, the one that made Mom spam my phone with crying emojis for 20 straight minutes. I thought about how easy it would have been to keep ignoring them, but curiosity won. Not the kind that hopes for reconciliation. The colder kind. The kind that wants to watch people reveal exactly who they are when they think they've already won. I turned left onto Laskin Road, past the strip malls and surf shops, past the neon signs advertising 2-for-1 crab legs. The Cavalier Hotel appeared on the right, all restored 1920s glamour white columns glowing under the new floodlights. I pulled into the circular drive and stopped behind a line of Range Rovers and Mercedes. The valet was 19, maybe 20, wearing the crisp navy uniform. He took one look at the Camry and hesitated, like he wasn't sure whether to park it out front or hide it around back. I handed him the keys without speaking. He glanced at my sweater, my unwashed hair, the frayed hem of my jeans, and the smirk was instant. "Running a little late, ma'am?" he asked, already reaching for the claim ticket. "Traffic," I said, and walked away, before he could decide if I was joking. Inside, the lobby smelled like lemon polish and old money. The marble floor reflected the chandeliers like water. I caught my reflection in the gold-framed mirror, tired eyes, messy bun clothes that screamed grad student poverty. Perfect. The hostess recognized the Brooks reservation and smiled too brightly. "Right this way, Ms. Brooks. Your party is already seated." I followed her through the main dining room, past tables of couples in suits and sequins, past waiters balancing silver trays of oysters and steaks. The private room was at the very back, double wooden doors closed tight. I could hear laughter through the wood, loud force, the kind people use when they're trying to convince themselves everything is fine. I stopped just outside, rested my hand on the brass handle, and felt absolutely nothing. No nerves, No sadness. Just the cold, clean certainty that whatever happened in the next hour would be the last time I ever had to care what any of them thought. Then I pushed the doors open and stepped inside. I stepped into the private room at the Cavalier exactly on time. Mom saw me first. She let out a high-pitched squeal that made the waiter flinch and launched herself across the carpet, arms wide like we were in some airport reunion commercial. Her perfume hit me before she did heavy gardenia and something expensive. She squeezed so hard my ribs creaked. "There's my baby girl," she crooned into my hair loud enough for the whole room to hear. "We missed you so much." Dad stood next, smoothing his navy blazer, the one he wears when he wants to look like the patriarch. He clapped both hands on my shoulders, gave them a firm shake, and grinned wide enough to show the caps he got last year. Look who decided to grace us with her presence. Brandon lifted his bourbon in a lazy toast from his chair. "Sup, sis?" Nice threads. Going for that homeless chic vibe, Madison was already angling her phone ring light, clipped to the case, filming everything. "Smile, Tegan. This is going straight to my story. Forbes star returns to the fam, you know." Uncle Ronald just raised his scotch and grunted approval. I let Mom steer me to the table like I was the guest of honor. The round linen was already set for 6 heavy silver 3 forks wine glasses catching the chandelier light. A bottle of Veuve Clicquot sat sweating in a silver bucket. Dad made a big show of popping the cork, foam spilling over his knuckles while Brandon whooped like they'd won something. To our brilliant girl, Dad boomed, filling every flute to the rim. "Forbes, under 30. 98 million valuation. Who would have thought our quiet little bookworm would turn into a tech titan?" They all raised their glasses. I lifted mine, but didn't drink. Madison leaned across the table, eyes sparkling. "Okay, but seriously, when do we get the family discount on your app? I have like 200,000 followers dying for beach content." Brandon snorted. "Yeah, or maybe invest in something that actually turns a profit. Dad's got this insane plan." Dad shot him a look, then turned the full wattage smile back on me. "We'll get to that. First, we're just so proud. Aren't we?" Diane Mom nodded vigorously, dabbing at dry eyes with a napkin. "Beyond proud. I've been telling everyone at the club. My daughter, the CEO." The waiter appeared with the first course, jumbo lump crab cakes and tuna tartare arranged like modern art. Dad ordered another bottle without asking anyone. The performance was flawless. He waited until the plates were cleared before sliding a glossy black folder across the table. Gold foil lettering on the front read, "Brooks Luxury Collection, a new era." Inside were renderings of sleek white buildings, infinity pools spilling into the ocean, rooftop yoga decks, and smiling models in linen sipping cocktails. "We're finally doing it," Dad announced, voice dropping into that boardroom baritone he uses on bankers. "Taking the old motels, tearing down the ones that are too far gone, and turning the prime Norfolk oceanfront parcel into a 5-star wellness resort. Spa farm-to-table dining celebrity chef partnership already in talks. This is generational wealth, Tegan." Mom clasped her hands. "We're even keeping the Brooks name on the marquee. Legacy." Brandon tapped the projected numbers page. "Construction starts next quarter. Total build-out around 22 million. Banks covering most of it, but they want skin in the game from the family first." Dad leaned in, elbows on the table, eyes locked on mine. "We need 2 million as a bridge. Family investment. 6% interest paid back in 24 months once the resort's cash flowing. Better return than any savings account, and it keeps everything in-house." He said in-house like it was sacred. Mom reached over and squeezed my hand, diamond bracelet flashing. "It's what families do, sweetheart. We take care of each other." Madison was still filming discreetly under the table. Uncle Ronald nodded along like this was the most reasonable request in the world. Dad slid a single sheet across the linen already prepared. A wire transfer form with my name typed at the top, routing and account numbers left blank. All I had to do was fill it in. I let them finish the entire sales pitch, glossy brochures, 3D renderings, the same tired promises. I waited until Dad leaned back satisfied, until Mom's smile started to slip from effort, until Brandon checked his watch like the deal was already done. Then I reached into the canvas tote I'd brought instead of a purse and pulled out a plain manila folder. No logo, no gold foil, just public records printed on cheap paper. I placed it in the center of the table and opened it slowly. Before I sign anything, I said, voice flat, "Let's talk about what's actually happening with the motels." Dad chuckled, still riding the high. "We just showed you the future, honey." I slid the first document across the linen. A notice of default from Atlantic Union Bank stamped 3 months ago. This says the business missed the last 4 payments on the primary mortgage. Total arrears $872,000. Mom's hand flew to her pearls. "That's just a timing issue." I turned the page. Second document, the bank sent the final demand letter 31 days ago. Virginia law gives you 42 days from that letter to cure or face acceleration. You're 11 days away from losing everything. Brandon shifted in his seat. Banks bluff all the time. I kept going. Third sheet, a recorded second mortgage from a private lender in Richmond filed quietly 18 months ago against the family home on 62nd Street. You borrowed another $1.5 million at 14% interest. Balloon payment was due last quarter. You rolled it into a third lien last month just to keep the lights on. Uncle Ronald cleared his throat. Those are aggressive lenders. Everyone does it. I looked at Dad directly. The house is cross-collateralized. If the business note accelerates, the bank can foreclose on the residence too. Sale date gets set automatically. You have no equity left to borrow against. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Mom's smile was gone. Dad's face flushed dark red under the tan. "This is family business," he growled. "You don't air that at the table." I didn't raise my voice. "You made it my business the second you asked for $2 million I earned while you were ignoring me." Madison tried for a laugh that came out strangled. "You're being dramatic." I turned to the last page, a printout from the Virginia Beach Circuit Court docket. Foreclosure auction is already scheduled. 42 days from the final notice. That's it. No extension without full payoff. Dad slammed his palm on the table hard enough to rattle the silverware. "Where the hell did you get these public records?" I said. "Anyone can walk into the clerk's office and pull them. My attorney Ryan Carter did it for me last week. He's very thorough." Brandon leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "So what, you came here to humiliate us?" "No," I answered. "I came to watch you ask the daughter you wrote off for money you have no way to repay." Mom started twisting her napkin until the linen tore. "We're your parents. You don't talk to us like this." Dad pointed a thick finger at me. "After everything we gave you. You gave me nothing but an allowance you could threaten to cut." I cut in. "I built everything else while you poured cash into Brandon's failed side hustles and Madison's sponsored posts." Uncle Ronald tried the guilt route. "Blood looks after blood, Tegan. That's how it works." I closed the folder. Not anymore. The shift was instant. The fake warmth evaporated. Dad's jaw worked like he was chewing glass. Mom's eyes filled with real tears, now panic tears. Brandon's fists clenched on the tablecloth. Madison's phone was forgotten in her lap. "You ungrateful little," Dad started. I stood up. The chair scraped loud in the sudden silence. I stood up slowly, took my phone out, and turned the screen toward Dad. The message from 2 years ago glowed bright in the dim room, the exact one he sent the second I stepped off the MIT stage. I read it aloud, word for word, in the same cold tone he used back then. "You actually went through with it without us there. Fine, don't expect another dime from me. You made your choice." Dad's face drained of color. Mom froze with her wine glass halfway to her lips. Brandon's mouth opened, then closed. Madison's phone slipped from her fingers and clattered against her plate. I locked the screen and looked straight at the man who wrote those words. Sorry, I said, calm and clear, busy. Forbes' party starts at 7. The sentence hung in the air like a slap. Mom found her voice first shrill and cracking. This is childish, Tegan. Dad tried to stand, but his knees betrayed him. He sank back into the chair. You will not speak to me like that. I was already thumbing through my contacts. I tapped the silent mode icon so the room could hear every tone as I blocked them one by one. Dad first. Blocked. Mom next. Blocked. Brandon. Blocked. Madison. Blocked. Uncle Ronald. Blocked. Each soft chime sounded louder than the last. The doors behind me opened without a knock. Ryan Carter stepped in, tall gray suit, perfect leather briefcase in hand. He didn't smile, didn't acknowledge anyone except me. Everything's ready, he said, placing a thin blue folder on the table. The top page carried the seal of the Virginia Beach Circuit Court and the letterhead of Atlantic Union Bank. Dad stared at it like it might explode. Ryan kept his voice professional. As of 4:30 this afternoon, Ms. Brooks purchased the first position note and all associated liens from the original lender. The bank accepted the assignment. Acceleration stands. No cure period extension is available. Mom let out a sound somewhere between a sob and a scream. You can't do this. I already did, I answered. Brandon finally exploded. You bought our debt. What kind of monster are you? The kind who learned from the best I said. Dad's hands shook as he reached for the folder, flipping it open with fingers that wouldn't cooperate. His eyes scanned the legal language he suddenly couldn't understand. Ryan continued, foreclosure sale remains scheduled. Personal residence included in the collateral package. All vehicles titled to the business will be repossessed within 10 business days. Madison started crying for real mascara streaking. This will ruin my brand. Uncle Ronald just drained his scotch and stared at the bottom of the empty glass. I picked up my tote. The chair legs scraped as I pushed it in. Dad found his voice cracked and small. Tegan. Please. I walked to the door. Ryan stayed behind long enough to slide a business card across the table. My office will handle communication going forward. I didn't look back. The heavy doors closed behind me with a soft final click. 1 year later, I was driving north on I-64 in the fall, windows down, salt air in my hair, heading toward a house I actually own. I took the exit for First Colonial Road out of habit, the same route I used to drive when I still thought family meant something. The old neighborhood looked smaller under the October light. I slowed as I passed the cul-de-sac where the Brooks house used to sit behind its perfect hedges. Red foreclosure tape now crisscrossed the front door like crime scene ribbon. A faded auction sign leaned crooked in the yard grass grown high around it. The marble fountain Dad installed the year Brandon graduated high school was cracked down the middle, empty except for dead leaves. 2 houses down, a repo truck idled at the curb. The black Range Rover that used to block the driveway every Sunday was hooked up and lifted, wheels spinning uselessly above the pavement. The driver waved at a neighbor watching from her porch, sipping coffee, like this was the best entertainment she'd had all week. I kept driving. At the stoplight near the warehouse district in Chesapeake, I spotted Brandon in a fluorescent vest unloading boxes from a semi. His hair was shorter, face tanned from outdoor work, no more designer sunglasses perched on his head. He didn't see me. He looked tired in a way golf afternoons never made him. Madison's face popped up on a billboard near the Lynn Haven Mall a week later, but not the way she wanted. The Virginian pilot ran the foreclosure story on the front page of the Sunday business section. Her tear-streaked Instagram live denying everything only made the screenshots go viral. Sponsors dropped overnight. The last post on her feed was a black square and the caption, "Taking a break." Mom and Dad moved into a 1-bedroom apartment off Virginia Beach Boulevard, the kind with exterior hallways and shared laundry. I know because the pawn shop on the corner sent me an automated email when Dad's Rolex president showed up in their system. Mom's 3-carat engagement ring followed 2 weeks later. The listings were public. I never answered the unknown numbers that started calling after the auction. I didn't need to. The message was delivered. My new house sits on a quiet lake 2 hours west, far enough that the ocean is only a memory on the wind. The mailbox reads Carter in simple brushed steel. I changed my name legally the same week the judge signed the foreclosure order. Not because I married Ryan, though the paperwork made things cleaner, but because Carter was the first person who ever chose me without conditions. Some mornings I sit on the dock with coffee and watch the mist burn off the water. The silence here is different from the silence I grew up in. It's not waiting for someone to notice me. It's the sound of finally being home. People ask if I feel guilty. I don't. I learned the hard way that love isn't a debt you owe just because you share blood. Real family earns the name every single day. Mine ignored me until I became useful, then tried to cash me in like a lottery ticket. I refused to be their winning number. Walking away wasn't cruel. It was the first honest thing any of us ever did. And if you're watching this wondering whether cutting toxic people out of your life makes you the villain, remember this peace isn't free, but it's worth every penny you'll never give them again.